DIRTRIM, a world with creatures and beings unimaginable to the eyes of mortals. Each part of DIRTRIM lived different species. Orthrins, from the north of Embriel, living in their towers to the unknown. Ormans, from the south, mining deep under the mountains, finding valuable resources. Terrians, hidden within the waters, flowing upwards through the rocks and dirt in the far west. Gold-feathered Herefins, as big as dragons, flying high in the sky. Wolfids, wandering through the ancient caves, finding artifacts that could then be melted into a drink to heal the sick and wounded. All lived in peace, but when there's peace, danger had come forth. It was the end of the Second Age when a great battle happened, a battle that decided the fate of DIRTRIM when an army of Gaudrians stormed the land. Gaudrian's power could summon powerful blizzards that created despair and suffering to all living things. Goblin-like, teeth as sharp as swords, claws as long as daggers, burnt like blue-colored skin, and eyes as dark as night. Many armies were defeated over time. All lived in fear for many years. It was as if nothing had the power and might to stand against them. But an awakening was heard through all the land that came from the deep south. A great army of 1,000 Terrian troops emerged from the ancient city of Rosenthal, led by a powerful Terrian warrior with golden eyes and named Remier. With the help of the blacksmiths, they forged armor and weapons capable of resisting the blizzards that would hopefully bring peace back. They soon traveled east to face them in the mountains of Muldra, where the Gaudrians' kingdom was. As they marched on and got closer to Muldra, heavy snow fell from the thick clouds, making the path hard as such. Once every few miles, the clouds turned grey and the snow reached up to their knees. Finally, after many days, they reached the mountain ridges where Muldra lay the other side. Screeches from the Gaudrians could be heard echoing through the air. It made some of the troops nervous. Remier's golden eyes could see what was ahead. A wide area covered in ice, perfectly flat. The Gaudrians stood at the other side with an equally imposing army. It was as if they knew they were coming. Remier called out his troops to form a line. Moderately hidden from the fog, a giant figure rises from the ground and stood tall behind the Gaudrian army. As the beast's blue eyes glowed through the fog, it screeched and raised its axe high in the air. Remier reacts. Both armies charged, and the ground rumbles from the footsteps hammering onto the ice. The first row of Terrians threw their spears, hitting their targets. Remier smacked down his sword onto the ice, summoning lightning, striking a pack of Gaudrians. Launching them up a great height, it cleared a path for Remier's swordsmen to rally. The armies collided. Swords clanked, shields broke, and bones cracked. It did not take long for a river of blood to begin covering the ice. Slash after slash, swing after swing, fatality after fatality. Both armies had equally fallen. Remier and 5 others survived, exhausted, panting, drenched in blood and filth. Only one Gaudrian remained, but it was powerful, tall, long white pieces of hair, and blue eyes as bright as the moon. Remier gathered all his strength and stood strong. The Terrians behind him stood their ground, their swords and bows drawn. Remier raised his arm to tell them to back away. "Leave this to me," he said. The large Gaudrian charged with a screech and summoned a large axe from the snow. Remier lowered his sword, raised his hand, and closed his eyes in concentration. A glow ignites from his hand, and his eyes change color from gold to blood red once he opened them. The light flashed brightly at the Gaudrian, and it stopped running to try and block the light with its axe. Remier cried out a native tongue. His voice echoed through the air, and the Gaudrian began to rise off from the ground. The powerful force of the wind beneath him swirled onto the ice around him. His eyes sharpened. Thin pieces of red lightning crawled through the grey clouds from all directions, forming into one large bolt above Remier. The bolt strikes directly into its chest. With all its strength, it tried to escape the magical force. It was, however, not enough, as it exploded into dust. Remier's power exhausted him. Falling to his knees, his palms pressed onto the cold ice. Blood dripped from his nostrils, and his eyes turned back to gold. He breathed heavily. The strong winds faded away, and the snow stopped falling. All was quiet. Remier laid on his back, as his arms lost strength, falling unconscious. His men feared their leader was dead, and so one carried him home. Walking back through the battleground, they surveyed for any survivors. They were shocked to see many of their brothers and sisters dead. But even with their sharp eyes, not a single movement could be seen. So much life had been lost, they wept in silence as they started their long walk home. As they travelled, the clouds diminished. The sun lightened the ground through the gaps. The ice melted off the trees. The rivers defrosted, and the flowers slowly blossomed. The Terrians soon felt a sense of warmth coming from the steam evaporating from the rivers. And the third age of DIRTRIM had begun.